June 30th, 1901, Volume 4. Signs to know whether the soul possesses grace. As I was in my usual state, my most sweet Jesus made himself seen for a short time, all transfused in me. And he told me, "My daughter, do you want to know what the signs are, to know whether the soul possesses my grace?" And I, "Lord, as your most holy goodness pleases." So he replied, "The first sign to see whether the soul possesses my grace is that in anything that belongs to God, which she may hear or see externally, she feels a sweetness, a gentleness, fully divine in her interior, which is not comparable to anything human and terrestrial. It happens as to that mother who recognizes the fruit of her womb in the person of a son even from his breath, from his voice, and she delights with joy. Or as to two intimate female friends who, in conversing together, manifest the same sentiments, inclinations, joys, afflictions to each other. And since each one finds her own things engraved in the other, they feel such pleasure in them, such joy, and take them to heart so much that they cannot detach themselves. In the same way, the interior grace which resides in the soul, on seeing externally the fruit of her very womb, that is, on recognizing herself in those things which form her very essence, corresponds with them, and makes the soul experience such joy and sweetness that one is unable to express it. The second sign is that the speaking of the soul who possesses grace is peaceful, and has the virtue of casting peace into others, so much so that the same things said by one who does not possess grace make no impression and bring no peace, while if they are said by one who possesses grace, they operate in a marvelous way and bring peace back to the hearts. Moreover, my daughter, grace strips the soul of everything, and makes of her humanity a veil with which to remain covered, in such a way that, as the veil is torn, one finds paradise in the soul who possesses her. So it is no wonder that true humility, obedience, and the like are found in that soul, because there is nothing left of her but a simple veil, and one can see with clarity how it is all grace that acts within her, that keeps all virtues in order for her, and makes her remain in continuous attitude toward God. June 30th, 1903, Volume 5. The Most Holy Virgin teaches the soul how to keep her interior gaze fixed on Jesus. The beauty of the interior soul. As I was outside of myself, I saw the Queen Mother, and prostrating myself at her feet, I said to her, "My most sweet Mother, in what terrible constraints I find myself, deprived of my only good and of my very life. I feel I am touching the extremes." While saying this, I was crying, and the Most Holy Virgin, opening herself at the place of her heart, as if she were opening a tabernacle, took the baby from within it, and gave him to me, telling me, "My daughter, do not cry. Here is your good, your life, your all. Take him and keep him always with you, and as you keep him with you, keep your interior gaze fixed on him. Do not be embarrassed if he does not tell you anything, or if you are unable to say anything. Just look at him in your interior, and by looking at him, you will comprehend everything, you will do everything, and you will satisfy for all. This is the beauty of the interior soul, without voice, without education, since there is no external thing that attracts her or upsets her, but all of her attraction, All of her goods are enclosed in her interior. By simply looking at Jesus, she easily comprehends everything and does everything. In this way, you will walk up to the top of Calvary, and once we reach it, you will no longer see him as a baby, but crucified, and you will remain crucified together with him. So it seemed that with the baby in my arms and together with the Most Holy Virgin, we walked the way of Calvary. While walking, at times I would find someone who wanted to take Jesus away from me, and I would call the Queen Mother to my help, saying to her, "My mamma, help me, for they want to snatch Jesus away from me." And she would answer me, "Do not fear. Your care must be in keeping your interior gaze fixed on him. This has so much power that all other powers, human and diabolical, remain debilitated and defeated." Now, while we were walking, we found a temple in which Holy Mass was being celebrated. At the time of Holy Communion, I flew to the altar with a baby in my arms in order to receive communion. But what was not my surprise when, as soon as Jesus Christ entered into me, he disappeared from my arms. Then, after a little while, I found myself inside myself. June 30th, 1908, Volume 8, The True Spirit of Charity in the Rich and in Priests. Continuing in my usual state, full of bitternesses and of privations, after much hardship, I seemed to see peoples in the act of rebelling and of intensifying the brawl against the rich. In the meantime, the lament of most sweet Jesus made itself heard in my ear, all embittered, saying, "I am the one who is giving freedom to the poor. I am tired of the rich. They have done enough. How much money wasted on balls, on theatricals, on useless trips, on vanities, and even on sins. And the poor? They could not have enough bread to satisfy their hunger. They were oppressed, weary, embittered. Had they given them only what they spent on unnecessary things, my poor would have been happy. But the rich have kept them like a family that did not belong to them. Even more, they have despised them, keeping comforts and amusements for themselves as things befitting their condition, and leaving the poor in misery as something befitting their condition." And while saying this, he seemed to withdraw grace from the poor, and these would become enraged against the rich, in such a way that grave things would happen. On seeing this, I said, "My dear life and my all good, it is true that there are some bad rich people, but there are also some good ones, like the many devout ladies who give alms to the churches, and your priests who do so much good to all. Ah, my daughter, keep quiet, and do not touch this key, so very sorrowful for me. I could say that I do not recognize these devout ladies. They give alms where they want, to obtain their intent, to hold people at their service. They spend even thousands of lire for those who sympathize with them. But then, where it is necessary, they do not deign to give a cent. Could I say that they do it for me? Could I recognize these actions of theirs? You yourself can recognize whether they do it for me from these signs. If they are ready for any bare necessity, if they do not differentiate by giving much where it is not so necessary, and refusing to give little where it is necessary. One can well say that there is no spirit of true charity or upright operating. So my poor are put into oblivion also by these devout ladies. And the priests? Ah, my daughter, that is even worse. They do good to all, You deceive yourself. They do good to the rich. They have time for the rich. By them also the poor are almost excluded. For the poor they have no time. For the poor they have not a word of comfort or help to tell them. They send them away, reaching the point of pretending they are ill. I could say that if the poor have moved away from the sacraments, the priests have contributed to this, because they have always taken their time to confess them, and the poor grew tired and no longer came back. But then if a rich person would show up, it is all the opposite. They would not hesitate one instant. Time, words, comforts, help. They would find anything for the rich. Could I say that the priests have a spirit of true charity, if they reach the point of picking the ones to whom they should listen? And what about the others? They either send them somewhere else, or oppress them so much that if my grace did not help the poor in a special way, the poor would have been banished from my church. True charity and upright spirit, only rarely do some priests have them. But as for the rest, I could say that these have departed from the earth. I remained embittered more than ever, imploring mercy. June 30th, 1931, Volume 29. How the greatest grace that God gave to man in creation was for him to be able to do his acts in the divine will. How this kingdom exists, and lived humanities have possessed it. I was thinking about the holy divine volition. How can its kingdom ever come upon earth, given the tempestuous times that threaten storms and the sad conditions of the human generations? It seems impossible. And it seems to me that the indifference and lack of disposition of those who at least are said to be good increase the impossibility, for they have no interest in making known a will so holy, and his will that wants to give the great grace of wanting to reign in the midst of creatures. How can a good ever have life if it is not known? But while I was thinking of this, my lovable Jesus surprising me told me, "My daughter, what is impossible in the human views, everything is possible to God. You must know that the greatest grace that we gave to man in his creation was that he could enter into our divine will, to be able to emit his human acts. And since the human will was little and the divine great, it therefore had the virtue of absorbing the little into the great, and of changing the human into divine will. So, at the beginning of his creation, Adam entered into the order of our divine will, and in it he did many of his acts. And while by withdrawing from our divine will he went out from inside of it, his human acts, operated in our will, remained as pledge and right for man, and as beginning and foundation of a divine kingdom that he acquired. In the divine will, whatever is done in it is indelible. God himself cannot delete a single act done by the creature in the supreme fiat. Now, since Adam was the first man to be created, it came as a consequence that, he being as though the root, the trunk of all the human generations, they would inherit, almost like branches, what the root and the trunk of the tree of man possessed. And just as all creatures, as though by nature, inherit the seed of original sin, so do they inherit his first acts done in our will, that constitute the beginning and the right of the kingdom of our divine will for creatures. To confirm this came the humanity of the Immaculate Virgin, to operate and to follow the acts of Adam, in order to fulfill, whole and entire, the kingdom of the divine will, to be the first heiress of a kingdom so holy, and to give to her dear children the rights for them to possess it. And to complete all this came my humanity that, by nature, possessed the divine will that Adam and the sovereign queen possessed by grace, in order to confirm with the seal of its acts this kingdom of the divine will. So this kingdom exists in reality, because living humanities have formed their acts in it as the necessary materials in order to form this kingdom, to give to other humanities the right to possess it. And in order to further confirm it, I taught the Our Father, so that with prayer they might dispose themselves and acquire the rights to receive it, and God might feel as though the duty to give it. By teaching the Our Father, I myself placed in their hands the right to receive it, and I committed myself to giving a kingdom so holy. And every time the creature recites the Our Father, she acquires a sort of right to enter into this kingdom. First, because it is the prayer taught by me that contains the value of my prayer. Second, because the love of our divinity toward the creatures is so great that we pay attention to everything. We notice everything, even the littlest acts, the holy desires, the little prayers, to requite them with great graces. We can say that they are pretexts, occasions that we keep looking for to say to her, "You have done this, and we give you this. You have done the little, and we give you the great." Therefore the kingdom exists, and if I have spoken to you so much about my divine will, those have been nothing other than the preparations of many centuries of my church, the prayers, the sacrifices, and the continuous recitation of the Our Father, that have inclined our goodness to choose a creature in order to manifest to her the many knowledges of our will, its great prodigies. In this way I bound my will to the creatures, giving them new pledges of its kingdom. And as you listened and tried to model yourself after my teachings that I gave you, so I formed new bonds to bind the creatures in my will. You must know that I am the God of all, and when I do a good, I never do it isolated. I do it for all, unless someone who does not want to take does not take. And when a creature corresponds to me, I look at her not as one alone, but as belonging to the whole human family, and therefore the good of one is communicated to the others. Now, if the kingdom exists, lived humanities have possessed it and lived life in it. My will wants to reign in the midst of creatures. My very knowledges say it in clear notes. How then can you think that it is impossible for this kingdom to come? To me, everything is possible. I will make use of the very storms and of new events in order to prepare those who must occupy themselves with making my will known. The storms serve to purify the bad air, and also to get rid of noxious things. Therefore I will dispose everything. I know how to do everything. I have the times at my disposal. So let your Jesus do it, and you will see how my will be known and fulfilled. June 30th, 1938, Volume 36. How true love wants to find itself in the loved one. How our Lord formed many lives to let himself be found. Our field. How knowledge opens all the doors between God and the creature. My poor mind is under the empire of the Fiat, which, pulling it to itself, makes it follow all it did for love of the creatures. While I was following the acts of redemption, my sweet Jesus, visiting my little soul, all goodness told me, "Daughter of my will, My love feels the need to open up to one who loves me and confide to her my most intimate secrets. True love has this virtue of breaking any secret because it wants to find in the loved one anything it possesses, its own love, its own joys, its same qualities. Love wants to find itself in the loved one. Know, my daughter, as I came on earth, my love never gave me rest. As soon as I was conceived, I began to form many ways that served to help the creatures to come to me. As I was forming these ways, I stretched them, but I did not detach myself from them. I remained as the center from which each of them started. Therefore, every act, word, thought, and step were ways of light, sanctity, love, virtue, and heroism that I was forming, so that in every act the creature does, she might find the way to come to me. At the head of these innumerable ways, I put my will as queen, while I put myself in waiting at every crossroad to receive her in my arms. But many times I wait in vain. My love does not give me peace or rest, so I put myself on her way in order to reach her at least halfway. And if I find her, I invest the act of the creature so I myself become her act and her way. Then with exuberant love I cover her, hiding her in my love. I cover her with my very acts, to the extent that I find myself in her, and I carry her to keep her safe in the arms of my will. Therefore, every thought of the creature has the way to my thought. Every word, every work has the way of my works, thoughts, and steps. If she suffers, she has the way and life of my sufferings. If she wants to love me, she has the way of my love. I surrounded creatures with so many of my ways that they cannot escape me, and if someone does escape me, I become delirious. I run, I fly, to reach him. I stop only when I find him, and I enclose him in my ways, so as not to let him go again. My coming on the earth has been nothing other than the outpouring of my love, repressed for many centuries. It was for this love, reaching excesses, that I formed the new creation, even overcoming it in the variety of my works and the intensity of my love. But my love is still repressed, and to vent it I want to give my will as life, to give creatures the greatest good I can give, and to receive the great glory of having the children of my will in our kingdom. As the creature enters our will, our joy is such that she gives us the field on which to repeat in her all we have done in the creation and redemption. Our love wants to see in action, as if they were being created, heaven stretching out, the sun resplendent of light, the winds blowing continuously within those who live in our will, waves of grace and love, seas murmuring love, glory, adoration to their Creator. In action, my will repeats the descent of the word, and my will is the repeater of all that my humanity did in the creature. So we remain always in the act of operating in her. We never stop, because nothing can possibly be missing in the one living in our will. Our very acts will be our throne, our court, and the very life of the creature. Our love for her seems almost unbelievable. We are all eyes over her, to see whether she is enclosing all, and how many times. Because we love her too much, we keep repeating our operating act, placing new beauty and new sanctity over the masterpieces we've done for her. We like to give to her always, keeping her busy under the reign of our operating acts. to give her the occasion to receive more love and to love us more. Therefore live always in our will, and you will feel in it the continuous outpouring of our love, our operating act, that not only will repeat our works in action, but will also add new things to astonish heaven and earth. After this he added, "My daughter, everybody lives in my will. If they did not, they just wouldn't find a space in which to live. But who feels our divine life? Who feels surrounded by our sanctity? Who feels the joy of being touched by our creative hands, to be embellished from our very beauty? Who feels drowned inside our love? The one who wants to live in our will, not the one who is there by necessity of creation, merely because of our immensity that involves everything and everyone. These creatures are there without knowing us, like real usurpers of our goods, like disloyal, ungrateful, degenerate children of their Father. Because they do not know us, they do not love us. They cannot find in themselves a place for our sanctity, our love. Their souls are incapable of receiving our ever-increasing beauty. They give us nothing, not even our rights as Creator. And while they live together in our divine sea, they are as if far away from us. By not knowing us, they build the bars, they shut the doors. They have broken any communication between them and us. It is knowledge that is the first joining link between them and us. It is wanting to live in our will that takes away the bars and opens the doors, to let them come into our arms and delight with us. It is loving us that makes us pour rivers of our love and graces, to the point of covering them with our divine qualities. Without the knowledge, we cannot give anything, neither can they receive. One who lives in our will instead knows us. As she enters it, she gives her kiss to her daddy. She hugs us and surrounds us with her little love, so we give her our seas of love, and she exchanges her kisses with all heaven. We can say that the celebrations are opened between us, between heaven and earth. We ourselves call her blessed, and we tell her, "You are the most happy and fortunate creature, because you live in our love, covered by our arms, and under the reign of our graces." End of June 30th. Fiat.